Alfred being killed sounds like a great idea because it creates so much drama. So many people go like, yeah, this is not Alec Holland. Why are you changing all of this? This is not my Swamp Thing. So you can only go downhill from there. This person has never read a comic in their life because they don't like comics, but they love your comic. I want to change Batman's costume. Hindu mythology means you must always tell the stories of people with golden jewelry and golden crowns. Ram, you're so harsh in your comments on Anand's work. So I would love to write a Chacha Chaudhary book.
डिटेक्टिव कॉमिक्स एक बैटमैन की मेन जीनियस की बुक जो उसकी मेन कंटिन्यूटी की बुक है एंड lot of our Indian guys is writing it. So
Lots of people, like all the artists that I work with, they loved Raj Comics. Like my wife looks at my career and my hobby and she says, look, you're doing well, but I don't understand any of this comic thing. Like, तुम करो जो करना है यार. ऐसा कॉमिक कभी बनेगा इंडिया में? बन ही नहीं रहा है.
So is it true that you actually went to Banaras for that and sat down with Aghoris?
Not Banaras. There is a river or a lake on at the edges of Vadodara, where there is a festival that happens where all of these Aghoris come and they essentially try to drown themselves in the lake.
Okay.
Because they feel like at the edge of death you can see Mahakal, you can see your god at the bottom of this lake, and then barely able to breathe, they rise up, which is a very fascinating thing. I was traveling there with a bunch of friends, one of whom is a photographer, and he was there photographing these guys, which was quite funny. The number of them that spoke fluent English was surprising to me. I had never seen anything like it, but I remember distinctly we were walking down the road backpacking, and we saw this Aghori butt naked on a old Enfield Bullet driving down the road, and my friend was taking a picture, and suddenly he stopped, and we were like, oh no, is he going to yell at us for taking a picture? And he turns around, he flips his hair back, he goes, you want to take picture? Take. And he poses for us on his bike. It was amazing. So there was a bit of research that happened, but incidentally, I didn't go to Banaras to do this research. I had already traveled quite a bit, and I have a lot of funny experiences like that. Like I've seen weird cults sacrifice animals at temples after midnight on a road trip to back down from Rishikesh. So yeah, there are weird things that you can see as long as you're willing to sort of put yourself out there and have fun. But none of it was. I'd done that years before I even thought of writing Aghori.
So what made you basically what means Aghori was your first book, right?
Yeah.
So being a writer means Aghori is not the traditional subject any comics book writer would take up, right? Because it's more supernatural. You can't do things wrong in that because the whole story people associated with all the whole cultural significance back in India with Aghori, right? So what made you think as writing building up a character like Aghori? What made you take it up?
Well, I was kind of tired of this whole like, oh, Hindu mythology means you must always tell the stories of people with golden jewelry and golden crowns, and they all go out and they are our ideals and we must act like them. I was kind of bored of that kind of, I had that problem of like, this is mythology. You're supposed to be able to tell weird stories with it. This is not, you can't define what kind of stories are part of your mythology. And it always felt to me like Aghoris were part of the sort of religious and mythological backdrop of Hinduism, and yet were such an underexplored idea because no one must speak of them because they're all left hand of God, if you will. And so I thought that was a fascinating standpoint to take because it was mythology and it was religion in all the ways that are familiar to anyone who has read Indian comics. But it was such a opposite view of that. It was such a view that was transgressive of that genre of comics in a lot of ways. So maybe it was a reaction to reading a lot of Amar Chitra Katha when I was a kid.
So my follow-up question based on that, because you mentioned Indian comics, right? So Mike, I have a quick question. Which of the Indian comics superheroes would Ramvi love to write, and
I
which
love
is
to
your
write.
favorite one? Yeah.
So, you know, full confession, I didn't really read a lot of the Raj comic stuff growing up because I had no access to it. So my comics I want to write has to come from things I loved when I was a kid. So I would love to write a Chacha Chaudhary book. I loved Chacha Chaudhary when I was a kid, and then maybe a close second would be Bahadur. I
Oh
loved
wow.
writing. I loved reading Bahadur as well when I was a kid. Um, yeah, and then I used to read all the sort of Indian reprints of the European comics, the Phantom, Mandrake, and Flash Gordon, all of that. I actually had the opportunity to discuss a Phantom a series before that IP sort of fell away and no one's done anything with
Oh.
it. Um, but yeah, so if those are counted as Indian comics, then I would like to write the Phantom also at some point.
Yeah, definitely. Phantom is part of Indian folk till now.
Yeah,
He's Indian.
exactly. But do you know of the weird reprints they had to do from the original books to be able to sell Phantom in India? So the original Phantom books, his forest is in the middle of a place called Bengala,
Yeah.
and when
Yeah.
it came to India, the people from actual Bengal were like, "What is this? We don't live in caves like this. What's going
Yeah.
on?" And so they had to reprint. That's why it became Denkali. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
assumed that was the truth of it until I went abroad and read comics. I was like, wait, all the names are different in this. What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, since the Anshul Bhai mentioned about the Aghori, I'll just go back to that. And I think we asked Vivek Goel also if he has any plans to release it internationally, because he had just put out a Hindi omnibus and that is selling like hotcakes. Like everybody is liking it in India. I'm not sure if
And I
you.
would love an English omnibus of
Yes,
Aghori.
yeah, that was the question. If you are planning with him, or if you can contact him and get that in English also, so that everybody here also can read.
Unfortunately, like my relationship with Vivek beyond that is kind of as it stands. That book is his property, and he does what he wants to with it. I've kind of moved on to doing other things, and I really don't have a say in what he can and cannot do with it because the money is his, and he has to figure out how that works.
I think Jeet
Yeah.
Bhai, you are
Jeet Bhai,
next.
you have any questions? Yeah. Go ahead, Jeet Bhai.
So, Ram, as we were discussing on Raj comics and all, right? So, like, as you had a confession that you never read it, मेरा confession कि मैं उसी पे ही grow up कर रहा हूँ. And even
Sure,
like I
sure.
have been in
But
US from
lots of people, like all the artists that I work with, they loved Raj comics. Uh, Taklif ye hai ki I think Raj comics was very popular all the way from north of India to about Mumbai, Western India. If you came
That's
from
true.
the south, you had
Yeah.
no background for Raj comics at all. So
That's what we talked about most of the time. Like it was not as popular
Yeah.
beyond a certain limit.
yeah.
So
No, but वो language का भी problem है ना. They should have like English उतना pan India करते हैं and all, but let's not
Correct.
even go there. So like even like I have been in US from 2007 and it has always been my happy place, right? कि मतलब among the whole stress of college and work or whatever, right? I can pick it up, read, and I'll be happy. It shows me the struggle or like also less to go into, right? So for me to move out from beyond Raj Comics happened because of this group, the folks over here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I started venturing out of it, like Anshul Bhai was like, you should read Aghori. There is like the story of him, that guy Vikram Roy being moving to Aghori in one night, right? Like they were like giving the glimpse and trailer कि भाई तुम पढ़ लो तुम्हें बहुत सही लगेगा. So I read it and I was wowed by it. But then I was then searching and I saw a few reviews from like Vishwajit Bhai and Indra Bhai and all, and on these savage shores. So the reviews then further intrigued me. So I read to it these savage shores and I was like blown away. Like I was amazed. I felt so proud. Like there are things, right, like that make an Indian proud. For me,
Yeah.
these savage shores was one of those things. But before, but I have a question now, right? When I read both of these books, the arc
Hmm.
has finished. So I was very happy with that, the overall joy, right?
Yeah.
But when you were releasing part by part, right? What was the kind of reaction you were observing? Like from Aghori, which was your first work, versus
Hmm.
these Savage Shorts, which happened somewhere you have graduated, right? So is it like
Yeah.
they became like a bigger hit afterwards, or they were like when you even released at that time also you were getting a very good response, or
I
per
mean,
your expectations?
frankly, I don't. Everything always feels like a bigger hit when it's coming, which I think is a good sign because that means you're trying to do interesting, better work each time. But also, I think from a professional standpoint, as a writer, your readership is a cumulative thing. Na? Maybe your first book is read by 10 people, then you do another book, those 10 people read it, but by that time they've talked to 10 more people. So now you've got 20 people reading your book. So it always feels cumulative like that. So everything I've done feels like a cumulative bigger hit, which is nice. Um, I think the big difference was there was something special about Aghori in that I think it came out in a market which is quite small compared to the market in which the Savage Shows came out, and it came out in a market that had readers who loved Raj Comics, who loved the indie comics in India, and then it also had readers who were spending hundreds and thousands of pounds trying to get whatever Marvel DC hardcover
Mm,
from the states, import it over to India, etc., etc. And I always felt like there was a very funny divide and bridge between those readers. There were people who read both, and then there were people who read only the DC Marvel stuff or Vertigo stuff and went like, यार ऐसा comic कभी बनेगा
mm,
इंडिया में बन ही नहीं रहा है, everyone's just doing the. And then there were people who read the just the Raj comic stuff and the Indian superhero stuff and went like, yeah, this is great, but we need to have better production values, we can get better artists, come on, it can be. And Aghori came out at the cusp of all of those readerships. I think Gaurav and Sumit and a bunch of people who did art, Lalit, who did art on Aghori, were some of the best artists around. And I think people like Lalit and Sumit, especially, who've made the sort of jump across to doing comics elsewhere as well. I think you could tell that they were working on this because they also felt like, oh, this is something different and new that has not been seen before. And so when readers read this, there was this initial skepticism, ki yaar, another Indian comic about some mythology, why are you asking me to read this? But it was quite encouraging to see those people kind of turn around and go, wait, this is actually good. This is actually interesting, huh? Like one of the biggest moments I'll remember was I met Mukesh Singh at one of the earliest Indian cons when I had not written anything. And in general, Mukesh was also kind of tired of the Indian comic scene. Ki, yaar, come on, let's do something new, let's do something interesting. And a few years later, I remember meeting him at a con again, and he came out of his way, reached out and went like, I read Aghori. I'm very happy to read a book like this, and it's really encouraging to me, and I hope you make more comics like this. So I think that encapsulated that entire feeling of releasing Aghori one issue at a time, kind of seeing readers go from a place of skepticism
mm,
to, oh, this is actually interesting.
Hmm.
And frankly, that experience was replicated with Swamp Thing. Because when we first announced Swamp Thing, we had so many people go like, yeah, this is not Alec Holland. Why are you changing all of this? This is not my Swamp Thing. And then about 4 or 5 issues in, all those guys, including people from America, white guys, black guys, people from Europe, everyone was looking at it and going like, wait, this is actually good, this is actually interesting. So that's always felt like a vindication of my decision to delve into writing, if you will.
Mhm. Like these Savage shows, right? Like the whole group is a big fan of. We even did a podcast. Vivek Bhai went ahead and did a like motion comics. If I don't know whether you have seen that or not.
No, no, I
Like
haven't.
and the
I'd
funny
love
thing
to.
was he was like he was marketing in Texas like these Savage shows. Right? He went to the comic book store and he was like you should read this and that way. So like
Yeah.
we had our fun ones. Like the thing is like there are things that give you pleasure, and these Savage shows were something like that. So one of my hobbies doing custom action figures, and I had done one for Agori, and I
Mm.
showcased it to Vivek Goel when we
Yeah.
had him on our podcast. So similarly, I did Bishan and Kori. If you
Amazing.
can see here, right? And
Yeah, I
the
can see
thing
them.
was, they were not my original plan. My original plan was Count Grano and the Rakshas. And it was
Right.
inspired
Okay.
from this splash page because I do dioramas and all. But
Huh.
when we did the podcast, all of the folks over here, they were intrigued by the mysteriousness of no, no, sorry, this mask.
Yeah.
This one, right? So like they convinced me that's something you should do. And then once you and Vision can't be complete without Corey, like specifically that
Sure.
joy is fleeting and all those dialogues, right? So
Right.
that's why, right? Like you have given me and a lot of folks so much pleasure that right? Like when we are doing these things, we were just like trying to pay homage to your or tribute to your work.
Thank
That
you.
that
Yeah, I appreciate that.
and I was like even my wife's friend was here, right? Like and
Mm.
she has a target of 100 books, and she's MBA and they read a different sort of books, right? So while she was traveling back, asked me any suggestions. I gave her these savage shorts. Like somebody who's reading all these like MBA books and lifestyle and
Mm.
everything. And I was like, like as long as you're a book reader, read it. I don't care what genre you are of. So thank you so much.
Oh, my
Right,
pleasure.
like I'm really, I feel blessed that I'm sitting in front of you and at least I can share my feelings to you.
Yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate it. And I think the cool part of it is people always ask me like how does it feel when you are at a convention or when you're at a at a show signing some books and people are coming to you and they really enjoy your work. And I get a huge chunk of comics fans coming in and saying, and it always feels nice. The thing I enjoy the most is when people say like this person has never read a comic in their life because they don't like comics, but they love your comic. I love it when people tell me that. So these Savage shows and Layla Star have brought in the most number of my wife doesn't read comics, but she'll read your comics. And I think that is the best thing because also culturally, right? It's such a niche hobby. Even though comics are such a huge part of the pop culture conversation, but someone picking up and reading single issue comics or graphic novels is still quite a niche hobby. And as evidenced by this podcast, and also as evidenced by large crowds in most conventions, it's mostly dudes reading comics, right? Occasionally, you get some women who read comics, but this idea that women who would never read comics and who, like my wife, looks at my career and my hobby and she says, "Look, you're doing well, but I don't understand any of this comic thing. Like, tum karo jo karna hai." And to get someone like that going like, "Yes, but my wife loves reading your comics," that is the ultimate endorsement, I think.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Ultimate proud feeling everyone is sharing about your work. I mean, for me personally, like, Batman. I mean, ultimately, this is the book, Detective Comics. It's DC Comics का 80 years से ज़्यादा का ये जो legacy book है. This is the pinnacle of where, as a comic book writer, I can imagine somebody can envision himself to be there. And you have been on this book for now more than a year, and it's outstanding. And every time I
Thank
go
you.
to the LCS or कहीं पे, it really makes me proud कि मैं उठा रहा हूँ एक डिटेक्टिव कॉमिक्स एक बैटमैन की मेन लीनियज की बुक, जो उसकी मेन कंटिन्यूटी की बुक है, एंड one of our Indian guys is writing it. So nothing beats that. I mean, that is
Thank you.
something outstanding. So I wanted to ask two questions in regard, mingled in this sense. कि इसके साथ, one thing is obviously, I'm sure it must have been one of your biggest achievements to finally, get the contact or write Detective Comics, write Batman. I mean, every comic book writer probably dreams about this job, hopefully. But also to say the least कि एक होता है बांग्ला में या हिंदी में हम लोग बोलते हैं कि एक होता है ना कि पब्लिशर का फरमाइशी लेख, यू नो, कि समथिंग दैट द पब्लिशर आस्क्स यू कि ये कैरेक्टर है, ये इसकी lineage है, ये इसकी हिस्ट्री है, write something in that. I know in recent past writers, they have done things in the Batman lore, जो अगेन स्पॉइलर है, लेकिन अब तो बहुत नॉन स्पॉइलर है. अल्फ्रेड को मार दिया, ब्रूस वेन इज नॉट द मिलियनेयर नाउ, things are gone, things have changed, the mythos of original Batman as we knew growing up has changed a lot. So as a writer, when you get into the main continuity book, आप काफी कुछ कर सकते हैं, थोड़ा बहुत चेंजेस तो ला ही सकते हैं, you can do that, but still it has bounds, right? Writing these shows, Laila Star, the bounds of where your imaginations can take you. Um, क्या वो कर सकते हैं आप बैटमैन में, या थिंग्स जहाँ पे एक इतने बड़े पब्लिकेशन का एक रेस्ट्रिक्शन है, एंड बिसाइड्स बैटमैन इज लाइक, it's still one of the most selling comics. Single issues sales have dropped a lot, like you said, Swamp Thing doesn't sell, but Batman, I see, still sells, right?
So
many
Swamp
people,
Thing, my Swamp Thing sold, by the way,
yes,
which
I
is
know.
good.
Batman is something like, it definitely puts the pressure कि एक writer उस पे जा रहा है इतने बड़े character पे. So what's your take on the whole thing? First of all, शुरू से लेकर वो मैं जानना चाहता हूँ.
Well, I think, well, let me start off with a joke. So I always tell people that my career was destined to have a downward trajectory. And people always go like, what does that mean? So my first DC story was a Batman story, and my first Marvel story was a Wolverine story. So you can only go downhill from there. So coming on Detective was the second time I think, yeah, second time I was returning to Batman. And my first DC short story was a Batman short story I did with Jorge Furness. And that story I got to do entirely by accident. So DC had read, the editor at DC had read Black Mamba. I had zero interest in the superhero side of things. I had more interest in the Vertigo side of things. And this was when Vertigo was still there. So I had sent Black Mamba to one of the Vertigo editors, and whose name was Jamie Rich, and he had enjoyed it. And he was talking to me about doing a Black Mamba 2 at Vertigo. So I said, yeah, I would love to do that. And then mid conversation, he was like, listen, I'm no longer a Vertigo editor. So unfortunately, I don't think we'll be taking this conversation forward. So I was like, yeah, it felt like a case of so close but so far. Like I was literally sent in outlines for volume 2, and that was not happening. And the way he said it, it sounded to me like he had been fired or he was leaving or whatever it was. And then 2 weeks later, he was like, yeah, I couldn't tell you at the time, but the reason I'm not a Vertigo editor is because I am the Batman group editor now. And I realized we were talking about doing something at Vertigo, but would you like to write some Batman stories? And at that point in time, it kind of dawned on me, went like, whoa, I'm going to be writing some Batman stories, I guess. So I said, yeah, okay, I'd love to do it. But because it happened that way, there was never this sense of intimidation that, oh, I'm writing a character with such a great history. And on some level, I have never been the kind of person to get intimidated by that. Like even when as a Vertigo guy, when I was offered Swamp Thing, I should have been quaking in my boots. But I talked to another British writer. His name is Kieran Gillen. So I talked to Kieran about, hey, I'm going to be writing Swamp Thing, and he was more intimidated than me. And so it has always been this sense of like, I love stories, and the moment you put Batman in front of me, all I see is like a toy and a story that I can tell with it. And on some level, I really don't care if people hate what I'm doing or they love what I'm doing. I hope that they will love what I'm doing. But it's like I'm 42, but I'm just a kid. You've given me a toy and I'm playing. I don't care what other people think. Um, and so that has kind of always been my approach. Um, and in terms of freedom and whether you can do things with Batman, I think the fundamental problem with why editorial is nervous about anyone making changes is because I think people make changes that sound like good ideas if you don't think about what they actually mean. For example, Alfred being killed sounds like a great idea because it creates so much drama. But you don't realize that Alfred is the only human voice that Batman has. He is technically Batman's voice of conscience. And if you take away Batman's voice of conscience, you are taking away a source of drama. And your job as a writer is to create drama, not reduce it. So you may get the shock value, but in effect, your stories have less drama because you do things like that. Again, the same thing with Bruce Wayne losing all of his money. Sounds like a great idea, but the entire point of Batman is that he has money, but he realizes that money cannot do certain things. And so it is the contradiction between somebody who could be driving around in a Lamborghini but chooses to be walking in a sewer punching a man who looks like a crocodile. So I think that is the fundamental contradiction of Batman. Now suddenly you say, okay, Batman has no money, he's just a regular guy. Then though I can find 10 of those in my backyard also. So I think it sounds like a good idea but isn't. Again, my same problem with the sort of mediocritization of a lot of villains. Like Two-Face, I think at some point was cured and became One-Face, in which case he's like the rest of us. He's just one face. Like, why is he a villain? Right? So I think
And I saw in your second book only you brought him back as a
Yeah.
as a badass guy.
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of it comes from that sense of like, no, I think we are doing things that in effect reduce drama. So my conversation with editorial is usually happy to let me do whatever I want to do with these characters because I usually have a sound idea behind why this is a dramatic thing to do. So, for example, my first call with this was we need an Alfred figure. Now we know we don't want to resurrect Alfred from the dead. So, what if I bring Gordon back and turn him into the Alfred figure? And now you realize that Gordon and Bruce's relationship is in a similar space as to where Alfred and Bruce's relationship was. In fact, even more dramatic because technically neither Bruce nor Gordon want to admit that they know who the other person is, um, which is another nice element of drama. And I don't think if you have this kind of drama, then you don't need the, oh, everything is going to explode. How are we going to save it kind of drama? And largely because my choices are driven by this need to create human drama, editors are a bit more comfortable with trusting the choices that I make. So I get to do mostly whatever I want with it. So the only objections I get is like if I go, I want to change Batman's costume. They're like, no, we can't do that because we have action figures to sell. So but even that can be circumvented. So we did change Batman's costume in the most recent issues of Detective. And while the initial reaction was, oh no, we don't want to change it, the next reaction was, actually, we have sent this costume for some action figure stuff. So maybe there'll be some action figures based on it. So we'll see.
Limited edition, right? That sells more.
So Ram, we know you have limited time. You have time constraint, but we'll take additional just 10 minutes to close it and wrap things up. Jeet Bhai has something special for you, but before we move into that, I want to say on behalf of our group, we are just, we started this podcast 8 months back, and entire group ambition was it would be epic, or our pinnacle would be when we kind of bring in Ramvi, somebody we kind of, look towards and reach towards. So
Too
thank you
kind.
so much once again, Ram.
Thank you. Thank you. No, my pleasure to be
Uh,
here. And
one quick,
I've always been someone who is like, I'll tell you another story. 2019 was the first time I went to San Diego, and I had, I think, one DC story out by then, and These Savage Shows was out. So there was some buzz around, okay, who is Rambi, but nobody from the readership actually knew who I was. Then the pandemic happened. I didn't go anywhere, but I did a lot of work over the 3 years that San Diego didn't happen. And then 2022, I believe, was the next time I went there. And I was going down the road and I was stopped by a group of six, I believe, all Indian origin college students who stopped me in the middle of the road and went, "Hey, you're Ramvi, you're writing this, and you've written Lela Star, and you've written, can we take a picture with you?" And that was really quite nice for me because, it's one thing getting recognized on the road in a city where you don't even live, which is quite cool. But also the fact that there were Indian college kids going like, "Hey, I can also write at DC Marvel, or I can also find somebody who's writing my stories at DC and Marvel," was quite nice.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I always make it a point whenever I get an invite from readers in India or of Indian origin to go hang out. Yeah.
So this is a great gesture, Ram, right? And this was the very reason why I booked my tickets for Fan Expo, man. For that is that you're coming.
Sorry. So there's been
No
a
problem.
bit of an issue with my travel documents and stuff here in the UK, and you know how it is. I have to apply here,
Yeah,
then it takes forever because somebody in India has to respond to my application. So I'm still
yeah.
waiting to get. I can't travel anywhere. Right? If it's any solace, I'm stuck here while you are trying to meet me.
So Ram, before I give it to stage to Jeet Bhai, I have one question, and it's very offshoot question. I'm not sure whether I should be asking this. So there was one TV show by Tony Shalhoub called The Monk,
The
and The Monk,
the monk.
uh,
Okay.
the the monk, and I was recently reading one of your books, The Six Finger.
Huh.
So I just wanted to ask, was that Six Finger, the ongoing story, is somewhere reference to that, or a homage to that TV series, or no? It's just a coincidence. I thought I saw some of the references, but maybe it's just a coincidence.
No, the Six Fingers stuff you realize Six Fingers is actually a second narrative
Yes,
to the one hand.
one hand. Yeah,
Um, and I've actually not seen this TV show, so I don't know what the references are.
no worries, no
Uh,
worries. And
so so entirely coincidental.
okay, and my last question is, we talk about collaboration, right? But so this trio, Ramvi, Sumit Kumar, Bidakar, whatever I have read and we have read is it's out of the world.
Hmm.
My question is, how does this collaboration happen? How do you guys collaborate? Means I haven't seen or read anything which has came out of this collaboration, which was kind of not unput down. It was amazing.
I mean, yeah, I know Sumit from my time on Aghori. He was already doing some comics in India. Um, I think my greatest quality in terms of finding collaborators is, and perhaps I'm a bit egotistical in saying this, but I believe I have good taste. When I see someone's work and when I see someone's work ethic, I can look at them and go like, this person knows what they're doing. This person is focusing on the right things. And even if you don't have good taste, you talk to Sumit for 10 minutes, you realize that he is entirely focused on doing what he does very, very well. And so I tend to work with people like that. Same thing I would say of Aditya Bidakar. I have not met a more thoughtful letterer in comics. Um, I've not met a lot of letterers in comics, but I think Aditya is again someone who is very similar to the way I think about my work. And so I tend to collaborate with people who are of a similar philosophy about how they work. Maybe we don't agree on the choices in the work, but we all agree on how you should work. And I think that's part of the reason why you see consistently good quality things coming out from collaborations like that. I would also mention Anand Radhakrishnan, who did Graffiti's Wall and Blue and Green with me,
Yeah.
who's working on my next DC project as well. So again, Anand, me, and Aditya have collaborated, and again for similar reasons. I think Anand is fantastic. His work ethic is fantastic, and so it's just a matter of finding people who are all interested in doing the same things with their work. Um, Beyond that, you also have to be friends with these people.
Yeah.
You have to have a level of comfort where you are not afraid to criticize each other. I think that is most important thing in collaborations, is when you have the ability to look at someone and go like, I think you should do this differently, or I'm not sure what we are getting from doing this. When there are a lot of artists who would take affront to that key, how dare you question my choice? Well, when you do that, I always point out, like, it's like being in a making comics is like being in a band. If you can't talk to your guitarist about playing a line differently, or
Hmm.
then you can't make music. And I believe the same thing about comics. So these are all people that I'm on a comfortable enough equation with, to where we can be truthful, we can be brazen in expressing our views. Sometimes editors will work with me and Anand talking, and they'll go like, Ram, you're so harsh in your comments on Anand's work, or Anand, you're so direct when you talk about Ram's script. But that's because we have an equation, and I think that kind of equation is important when you collaborate.
Thanks, Ram. Jeet Bhai, floor is all yours.
Mhm.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So Ram, to give some background, right? Like we are all comic fan distributed across world, and we used to like talk on phone almost an hour every day,
Hmm.
right? So that originated to a podcast, that why not, like when anyhow we are talking, why not record and just put it out there, right?
Mhm.
And when we started this, we thought like we will talk about, so we wanted to do pop culture, but a lot of focus has been on comics.
Hmm.
And a part of that was we will invite guests, right? And let us talk through them.
Hmm.
And when we were inviting guests, what we also came up with, what is an action figure line, what we call Jewels of Indian Comics. So on this, now the next entry is Ramvi, right?
Whoa!
Uh, a-
First
and
time.
and then
That's
there was a
amazing.
debate. So the same thing, right? When I did this, the team was like, is he any longer an Indian this thing artist? And I was like, see, the Aghori, right? It paved a way, right? It was path breaking. We go and Ram, what they did, that gave strength to a lot of other publishers, and they came up with the like now. If you look in India, there are a lot of like small publishers, right? Small,
Sure.
mid-size, etc. Right? They
Sure.
are all doing comics, and so there, like you have already done a groundbreaking work. And then the biggest challenge we had on this, so the art was done by our own in-house artist Vivek Bhai.
Nice.
Okay,
Yeah.
and like my bias, you can see I just gave Aghori and These Savage Shorts. For me, These Savage Shorts is Indian. I do not
Yeah.
care. Like there, everybody they argue that that's a foreign publication, etc. I said like it makes me proud, right? It makes me more proud than people
Yeah.
are proud of the UK president. Like
And I
Ram is
think
more Indian.
I also feel like we have this, I don't know, insulationist thinking in India. Ki, oh, if you have gone out, you are no longer part of this. But I think that's a weird way to think. Um, I think more artists and writers from India should look at what they do as a viable profession. And
Mhm.
for many reasons at this point in time, it's a viable profession in places outside of India, maybe not within India yet. And only by having a community of people who have a pathway to that kind of success, then that success comes back and it builds, and people see that there is a future and possibility in doing things. So for anyone who's questioning whether I'm still an Indian creator, like at this point, I spent half my time in India and half my time outside of India. But all the time I've been outside of India, I've still been writing about India. So that should tell you where my heart is. So
Yeah, no, but I'll tell you, right, our biggest challenge was we put, so we have a bio also. So the bio was easy to pick up from your website, right? But we wanted date of birth and place of birth. So the place of birth, we were conflicted, Pune or Mumbai. So we didn't put it.
okay.
We would like to know.
No, I was born and brought up in Mumbai.
Mumbai, okay. Then the date for the date of birth, our stock specialist Amit, he went and he came up with the 5th November 1981. Now the
Perfect.
problem is the time zone, right? So we take a leap of
right.
faith, and we went with okay, it's a 5th. We'll go ahead with 5th November, and the whole plan was Vivek Bhai will present it to you in Comic Con, and if it is wrong, you can jaleel him. We don't care. Right?
Okay,
Like
good.
that's
So
his
you were ready to take the brunt of all of that as well. Great.
yeah, right? Like
Well, I had all the books lined up, so I would take any kind of burn or any kind of blood, in return of that. So I wouldn't have minded at all.
Look, I'm in San Diego, and I'm sure I'll be in Dallas next year or something. So.
Cool.
So even there is a storm happening there, right? So this is the backup piece. So there is a piece en route to Vivek Bhai.
Oh, nice.
Right, like so we were like we had a backup, right? We can't disappoint Ramvi.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's the first time someone's made an action figure of me. Now I have to actually get out and do some exercise, otherwise I would look like my
The beauty of having an in-house artist, right? I couldn't like I didn't have a part for your jacket, this brown jacket, so I changed it to vest. And I then told him that this is how I want because
Great.
this is how the figure is. Now you change the person to the figure.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Go
I
ahead.
appreciate it. Thank you. Very kind.
This was I had to sacrifice a female hair.
Nice. Yeah, good.
Right? Like your hair is
Lots
so
of female
nice,
hair was
right?
sacrificed for this as well.
Okay.
Hey,
Yeah.
I think we are just on time. Hey, thanks, Ram. Thanks once more to come to our podcast, and thanks for having such a good time with us. Thank you so much, Ram.
Thank you. Thank you for
So,
having me.
to all our friends, just like, subscribe, and as usual, let us know your feedback. And thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Cheers,
If
guys.
Ramvi has something to share with us, how his experience was in maybe a couple of lines, and if he would, he has watched any episode, I'm not sure, but he can tell us if he has any feedback for us.
Well, before Ram goes, I wanted to put one thing, if Ram was not as successful as he is today, he would have been the 11th member of this NRI podcast, Just kidding. Go ahead, Ram.
Yeah, no. See, I'm not one of those like snazzy, high production value podcast guys. I just love and coming and talking to people. I'm very extempore. I don't prep beforehand and all of that. So I'm always appreciative when people have put in a lot of effort to sort of make things good, because it makes up for me being a total slacker. So this is a very, very lovely experience. It's been great to talk to all of you. And it's always nice to talk to people who kind of understand where you've come from. I don't think I get a lot of that. I mean, I do a lot of podcasts outside, but I don't think people truly understand what kind of a journey it is to be a chemical engineer in India and then start writing and then write Batman. So I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ram.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Ram.
Cheers, guys.
See you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much.
Bye bye.
Bye.